right, let's get started with our call today. I'm going to pass it over to John for our stakeholder introduction.
Good morning. I hope everyone's doing well and getting ready for the season. While I'm going to share my screen really quickly. All right. So, as I normally do on these, we're going to do a quick stakeholder introduction. The question is, why do we do them? It's to get to know others on the call and some build the connections that lead to collaboration. I've gotten some ideas for new hobbies. We get to spotlight somebody for 30 to 45 seconds, and I think it's a lot of fun, and it gives me a lot of pleasure to do. So for this person, we ask, what do you like to do to relax or unwind? And he likes to spend time with his family and friends. And from the picture, some pictures we'll see that I believe that. Some interesting facts. Some of his first jobs, including working at Taco. I'm guessing that's a chain somewhere in the Midwest or West because I've never heard of them, but it sounds interesting. Umpiring at baseball games and selling campers. I think everybody should have to sell something at some point. It gets you to know how retail works or understand. Something others may not know, he was an all-city violin player in high school. That's really amazing. And he's currently in his high school sports hall of fame, and he's also known as the Flash. He's been in EMS, healthcare, and data for about 26 years. And when we asked, what do you like best about your job? I really liked his response. I'm going to read it quickly. EMS data can save lives. EMS is at the forefront of emergency patient care as we are the first to assess and treat many patients. Our data can paint a picture of what is and is not working regarding patient treatments. EMS providers can save lives daily, but they do not know how they are doing if they do not see the data. I love my job because I get to look at the data every day and compare it to research or best practices to see if there are ways we can improve the outcomes of patients in our state. And I think that kind of sums up the whole purpose of why we're all here. So any guesses? It's the Flash. Chad Poor, the program and policy analyst from the Kansas Board of EMS. So for extra credit, if anybody wants to write in the chat, what is a penumbra? And I don't think they're talking about the medical device company that builds the little things for strokes. If you have not been introduced, I'll put a link in the chat as I always do. And here's a QR code because I love QR codes, and you can scan that really quickly. Trying to give you a minute to scan it. And that's it. This is a picture from our annual meeting. 5 seconds to see if you can find yourself. 4, 3, 2, and it's over.
Thank you, John. I did not know that was your nickname, Chad. That's gonna be good to know. All right, let me share our agenda quick here again. And next up, we have Jen Correa with a maintenance update.
Good morning. So right now we are in the middle of maintenance, and Ben's going to give an update on that shortly, but we are still going to use our third week maintenance window, which this month is December 19th and December 20th. So during that time frame, if you experience any issues or something doesn't seem slow or your data is not returning, be patient, try again in a little bit outside of December 19th and December 20th. If you're experiencing issues, please open up a help desk ticket and let us know that that's going on. And Lauri, do you want me to just go ahead and go into the next items? I could do that.
Yep, that'd be great. The procedures poll. Thanks, Jen.
All right, and I'm going to replace the current share with mine. Hopefully everyone can see a spreadsheet. The poll closed, and this was sent out to about 900 EMS stakeholders that had the ability to vote if they wanted to. And this was in regards to where the airway placement technique would be placed for version 351. And over 70% is how it came out, voted for the eProcedure section. As you can see, most of the folks who voted serve in a clinical capacity or are provider agency data management, state data manager. Not a lot of vendor responses. And so that will remain in the eProcedure section. And it will be available in version 351. And then we are going to have a few other changes. There were some submissions that were made. If you were on the last V3 implementation call, you probably heard some of this information that was discussed. And so the NEMSIS TAC leadership and the DMC leadership got together and discussed some of those items that had been submitted, and they did make a few adjustments to version 351, and we wanted to let you know that they were coming. So during the candidate release, normally it's for technical changes only, but we went ahead and made 6 other changes that are not technically technical. So the first one here, and I hope this is big enough for everyone to see, is with ePatient 24, patient's preferred language, which is a new element within version 351. And we updated the title and the definition. We just added that S in parentheses, and that's because this is a 0 to many field. And so without that S, the person who submitted it thought that did not really lend itself to marking more than one language if you were doing so as an EMS clinician. The other 2, there was a couple of different items that were sent in on this particular ticket, but the one that made sense to the TAC leadership and the DMC leadership that they thought was not changing anything that was previously voted on by stakeholders is this description value for struck by vehicle along roadway. So here you can see the way it was entered in the first version of version 351, struck by with a dash struck by vehicle along roadway. And that struck by the first one seemed like it would be somewhat confusing. So they went ahead and changed that description and eliminated that first struck by. For situation 13, which is initial patient acuity, they did update the definition. As you can see, the original definition for version 351 did not say this EMS unit. It just said upon EMS arrival. And so they added upon this EMS unit's arrival at scene to clarify that this is the initial patient acuity that was found by this EMS unit when they arrived on scene. Disposition 19, which is the acuity upon EMS release of the patient. This also had the after this EMS unit's release of the patient. To clarify, as you can see in the original, it didn't say this EMS unit, which does go along with the way other elements are listed within the NEMSIS standard data dictionary. The 5th and 6th one had to do with the stroke score and the stroke. Originally, it was the stroke severity score. And because there was quite a bit of discussion, clinical discussion back and forth about the score that's entered may not be a severity score. It may just be a score that goes along with a stroke scale assessment that was being done. There were some changes that were made. So for eVitals 29, rather than call that stroke scale score, that is being relabeled to stroke scale result. It still has the negative, non-conclusive, positive results in there. Nothing else changed for eVitals 29. For eVitals 34, rather than the original version 351 title stroke severity score, it changed to stroke scale score. The definition was also updated to reflect that change. We did add the pertinent negative of refused just to bring it in line with the same way the stroke scale results can be entered. So those 6 changes you will see them in the next release of version 351. And as I said, that was talked about and discussed by the DMC leadership and the TAC leadership, that those items made sense to change prior to the release of version 351. And the eProcedures 14 will remain as is. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing really quick. And I think that Sheree, that is the National EMS Quality. No, this document is not available anywhere. It will be made available when the next version 351 release is done and we update the data dictionary. We need to also update our resources and things like that. So it's not currently available. And Chris, are folks able to unmute themselves at this point? Samantha, I see your hand up. I think
Yes.
you're muted. Oh, good. Okay, go ahead.
So I just wanted to know, with these changes, does that impact the timeline for when 351 will be released?
No, right now, as of now, the development does not think that that will change the timeline.
Okay, so we're still expecting for it to go out in January and for the NEMSIS TAC to start accepting on June 1st of 2025. Okay.
As of now, and you know me, I'm always careful how we say that.
Yes.
As there's enough technical people on the call to know that sometimes you can't foresee everything, but as of now, there is no change in the timeline.
Perfect. Thank you.
You are very welcome. Great question. Is there anyone else that wanted to ask a question or? All right.
So it seems like the e-patient 24 didn't match the final mock-up of the request. Didn't know if that was
It did not.
Yeah.
That was the changes that the DMC and TAC leadership wanted to go with.
Okay.
David, I did reply to that ticket. If you still want to move forward in the next version that will be released after 351 with that change, we can move forward with that and have folks talk about it.
Sounds good. I just want to say a big thank you publicly to Jen. I know this process is tedious and we really make an effort to make sure every stakeholder's voice is heard and opinions are heard and shared along the way. But we recognize too, it's not always going to make everyone happy, every decision. And so just know that if there's stuff you saw in there that you think continues to need to be changed or updated, or you have questions about, submit a ticket and we would love to consider those for the next revision and bring them to all of our stakeholders again to make decisions about. So thank you, Jen. And I'm going to pass.
And they will hear more about the new change process and how that goes and how it'll flow. We will start talking about that quite a bit starting in January to let everyone know it is different than it's been before. It's going to hopefully streamline the process so you don't enter something and then you don't talk about it again for a couple of years. So there's a lot more upfront work with the requester to make sure we understand what the requester is asking for, and that what you were hoping to see is what gets talked about by the stakeholders. Oh, and you know what, Lauri, I kind of forgot to go back to Ben on that maintenance.
Sure.
Ben, did you want to give an update on the current maintenance that's going on?
Yeah, it's very brief. The maintenance window that we had advertised occurring this week has gone ahead of schedule. Currently, the maintenance is complete. You should not see any external impacts. But if you do, for any reason, see anything that's not behaving properly, please open a help desk ticket and let us know. But otherwise, the week-long maintenance window that we had advertised in the MailChimp group is now done ahead of schedule. That's all I have.
Good. And do you know, Ben, will it affect emails going out next week?
Oh, right. We don't anticipate it to. The email should occur if you subscribe to any of the Tableau dashboards, should go out as scheduled next week. If you notice any discrepancies in the email, please let us know about that as well. But yeah, we had initially planned on, while this took this week, pausing those email subscriptions next week since the data would be stale. But because this occurred fast enough, we do not anticipate any problems with those reports. So they should occur like they normally do.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ben. Anything else you wanted to say, Jen?
No, ma'am, I am good. I apologize, Ben.
All right, sounds good. We will pass it over to Randall, who has the next couple of topics and the NEMSIS liaison update, and also discussion or an update, I believe, for the violence against EMS providers.
Yes, Lauri, thank you. So first for the NASEMSO liaison update, the Data Manager Council, they've just been working really hard on a blood product documentation guidance form. Next week will be the official time for the DMC to look at that. We've had lots of suggestions. Really, this form is based around the current version 3.5 standard and making sure that we can document pre-hospital blood administration. So once that is finalized, we'll be able to get that out to everyone. And like I said, it's been sent out to many different working groups for feedback, and I think we have a really good starting place. This is a living document. Amber has been really kind of discussing this a lot about, as the changes happen, as we need to have differences in the system, we'll be ready to make those things happen. Other topic for the Data Managers Council was the extended data definitions. We continue to kind of go through those. It's really interesting as we go through these extended data definitions, we continue to find some field values that just don't really seem to fit where they are. So as we continue to work through those processes and see if we can continue to clean that up. And then lastly, if anyone's not aware, NASEMSO does have a new website. If you've received an email, we do ask that you get logged in. It's very confusing. We understand that. Lots of new buttons. So NASEMSO is working really hard to give any kind of guides that we can provide to anyone. And once again, you can just reach out to myself if you have any questions, and I can see if we can get you through that. And that's all my updates for today, Lauri. Thank you. And then I'll have to share my screen for the next portion, Lauri.
Okay.
It says only one presenter can share at a time. I don't know if that makes a difference.
I will stop sharing.
How's that look?
Perfect.
All right. So the next topic here is really an update on the Violence Against EMS Clinicians project that we've been working on. Internally with the NEMSIS TAC, it's been myself, Kevin, Jen, and Jeremy Kinsman from the NHTSA's Office of EMS. So as we kind of went through this, we'll kind of give you guys a little step-by-step. We're looking for a little bit of feedback on these data elements, how they work. There's been a lot of discussion about making sure this isn't part of the EPCR. So there's been a lot of great discussion on this. So for our project overview, really we're trying to characterize the occurrence of violence against EMS clinicians by providing evidence on the prevalence, severity, and impact of these events. We want to inform the need for EMS clinicians' violence prevention, mediation, education, training, safety resources such as restraint devices or spit hoods. We want to promote advocacy for these victims and influence legislation to support safe working conditions for the EMS industry. Some of our guiding principles here was to make sure to limit the EMS clinicians' documentation burden. As we kind of go through these draft data dictionary, we'll see anytime we had an element that already existed, we wanted to make sure we could auto-populate that in this new report. Pursue a data collection process that fulfills multiple reporting requirements, such as like a law enforcement, workman's compensation, or just an EMS incident report. We really wanted to seek feedback from local EMS agencies and clinicians who were looking to do some pilot projects. Promote a process that encourages response, support, and actions from our EMS supervisors. We didn't want anyone to feel that our EMS clinicians were just filling out a form and then nobody was looking at it. this process actually takes it from an ePCR, and we want to be able to move it into like a supervisor type of role so that it can be follow-up. We kind of mentioned this before, but making sure that the ePCR and the violent reports are separate. The violent report may not be part of the patient care. Consider how violence reporting may need to align with our state discoverability laws. Allow for different levels of data collection, whether that be at the local, state, or national level, very similar to the way we collect data at the NEMSIS now. And then we want to keep in mind the NEMSIS violence data schema can be tailored to protect the PII, PHI, and serve the needs at the local, state, and national levels. And NEMSIS violent data collection can be made optional for EMS clinicians, state, or EMS agencies. So two of our objective here was explore additional field values for E-other-06 to capture the violence against the EMS clinicians. That'll be on our next slide, but that is going to be for an update for the NEMSIS version 3.5.1. We also want to develop a draft data dictionary for collecting comprehensive violence against EMS clinicians information. We put together a working group. We facilitated those meetings. We solicited a lot of feedback and recommendations, and we disseminated those recommendations through those meetings. As I just mentioned, for the version 3.5.1, you'll see these additional field values for E-other-06, which is the type of work-related injury, death, or suspected exposure. These field values, they really went through a lot of process, a lot of picking out. We looked at all the different states to make sure words didn't match. There was a lot of involvement to make sure that these all fit and also captured a majority or all of the type of violence that could exist. We kind of talk about our working group. This wasn't just the members of the NEMSIS TAC. We reached out to a really great team in Canada, which was Dr. Elizabeth Donnelly and Dr. Moz. They have a great system there where we were able to kind of understand what they were doing with this violence against EMS clinicians. We worked with our software vendors. We had individual EMS clinicians on the call, United States Fire Administration, CDC, NAEMT, and all of them participated in these 3 virtual meetings. We obtained feedback from them all, and we did surveys on the individual data element groupings, which I'll get into here on the next slide. When this project started, we did have more data elements overall, but as we kind of went through the surveys, discussed them, is this element even needed? Is it a reoccurring element? So there was a lot of discussion. So we kind of broke it down into like these. There's more like 5 categories at this time, but we started with 3. The EMS crew member details was very particular to, the EMS crew member, who the form was applying to, what their role was. So there was 8 new violence data elements that went into that, and 2 of those could be, and then 2 existing NEMSIS data elements that could be pre-populated right into that section. There's also a violent incident event details where there's 19 data elements, and that seems like a lot of data elements, but most of those data elements are actually time involved, so we understand where the event was taking place. And then there's an assailant detail section, which is more like a possible law enforcement report, and I guess we kind of envision this as like a face sheet. No one is asking the EMS clinician to investigate who these people are, to figure these things out. But there is a data element in there where we're asking if it was the patient who assaulted you or committed this violent act against you, that information from the patient could be pre-populated in. We'd also talked a little bit about a supervisor review section. The supervisor review section, none of these 30, 60, 90-day follow-ups or anything that is secure. It was more just like a broad time where the supervisors will be able to go back and forth between the clinicians and ask them questions where, maybe they were physically injured or they had a mental issue that occurred from this event where they'd actually be able to go and follow up. That could be from a loss of work to the clinician actually resigning their position, or maybe there really just was no effect and everything could continue to move forward. Some of the additional data elements that are still needing to be considered, kind of working with our data managers, were really based around the provider's primary impressions, understanding what the medical condition was of the patient, and we're just seeing if those can also be auto-populated and bring in to this report. So how will this help the EMS clinician or the agency? This is a really great opportunity to start training our EMS clinicians on this violent acts that can occur. Whether that violent act is affecting you or not, it's always a good idea to try to document this so that we have an idea of where this is happening at. Another additional piece of this was the dispatch role. Whereas if you were having a violent incident at a certain residence or at a certain address, they could actually put a flag up where law enforcement could respond with you, or they could just change the way that the response needed to be to protect you. But the EMS clinicians will be empowered to confidently and securely provide information about violent encounters to their supervisors. This would keep them from having to go and report this on a separate system, go and talk to their supervisor later. Maybe during this call, the EMS supervisor was actually the one that you felt had this violent act towards you, and you don't feel comfortable doing that. This would also be in a situation where if you have your fellow partner or another member of the response team that had this involvement, you would also be able to do this securely and confidentially. Establishes a reporting that encourages response, support, and actions from our supervisors. Aggregate and de-identified information may be used to understand the impact of violent encounters on recruitment, retention, and the need for safety education, training, and resources. So what will the data tell us? It's going to characterize the frequency, the type of impact of violence on EMS workforce at the agency, state, national levels, if and what type of actions needed from our policymakers and elected officials, and the types of resources, training, and education EMS clinicians need for the preparation, mitigation, and action when facing a violent incident. So part of our next steps was to provide a copy to the advisory board, review any suggested edits that they have. Today, we're giving a slight presentation on the V3 call. We're also going to give the same presentation to our NASEMSO Data Managers Council and Medical Directors Council to get additional suggestions. Identify some potential sources of funding for a pilot, and identify states, locals who are interested in piloting this project. And then the last step there will be determine the management, maintenance, the schema, data dictionary, and the hosting of this data. While we're still looking for feedback, we're still working on this process. I would have asked any of you to please send me the information back. We should be able to get a copy out of this draft data dictionary for everyone to kind of have their eyes on with this PowerPoint. So they'll be able to kind of understand all the different data elements, the questions, the field values. It's also listing in there what data element we're trying to pull from the current data dictionary. So it's a nice little map out, and hopefully it'll fit everyone's needs. Please feel free to respond to myself, send me any suggestions, and you can also submit a NEMSIS help desk ticket. That's all I have today, Lauri.
That's great. Thank you, Randall. And John was able to share that presentation over in the chat for anyone that's interested. You can access it there.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Chris Hoffman, who's going to talk about a state EMS annual report template. And this report has come to us from states, many of you on the call, who just said essentially you'd love to not have to reinvent the wheel as you do an annual EMS data report in your state. And is there some way that we could help with that process, create a template you could cut and paste into, and also compare easily your state data to a national benchmark. And so we met last week with a handful of data managers who gave input and ideas, and then we wanted to share some ideas here with you and then open it up for ideas or input and feedback as well. And we hope to get this released perhaps at the end of the first quarter of 2025, a first version of it for you to use for a 2024 data report. I'll pass it to you, Chris, with that introduction.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Lauri, for the introduction there. Nothing, this is what I live for here in the department, is being able to deliver something that the data managers have asked for, right? So want to make sure that it is now that we know what we're looking at, kind of want to give something visual. I think it's easier to look at something and edit it than look at the blank page. Thanks again to the data managers who got together in this group and gave us our initial feedback. And so the first thing that I'm going to be showing here is sort of a template of a PowerPoint presentation that would have some of this information that is gives you the opportunity to compare national data to your state data. And then also based on the next after that, I have a draft of a table of contents based on the feedback that we had from the meeting with the data managers. And so I'll explain that as I'm going along. So the idea here is to have a couple of different documents that NEMSIS creates and has the national set of national numbers already in it so that you can come through and add comparison data that you want to share with your stakeholders. The idea with with all of this documentation is that it is probably going to have way too much information, and it is going to be something that once you put in your own information, that you edit down to what you want to share with your stakeholders. If you've worked with our good friends over at the EDC, they do something similar with this for their the data that they collect from their pediatric surveys. So,
Excuse me,
yeah.
Do you think you're sharing something more than just the little draft document with data collection results? It sounds like you think you're sharing something more.
I do, and I've got this delusion now that I'm actually showing my PowerPoint. Are you not seeing a PowerPoint slide?
No.
No, we're just seeing the first.
Wonderful. Let us see. Share.
We did see the first page with the ambulance on it.
Yes, that's what we're looking at.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So these are the slides that so I'm actually showing the PowerPoint right now of like the ideas of the PowerPoint. So we're going to have two different ideas of a couple of different documents. One being a PowerPoint that you can edit, add your information to, subtract any slides that you don't want to have in there, and then you've got a PowerPoint that you can either present live as a in-person or a Zoom meeting type thing, or that you can package as a PDF and send out to people. The other document would be a Word document that you can edit all of the same things with. You can edit your information into it, take out whatever you don't want to share, and then put it out as a PDF to your stakeholders. So the idea here is that we're trying to white label a lot of this information too, so that it shows that it is NEMSIS data that you're comparing to, but that it's supposed to be you in the spotlight as a data manager. We're trying to make this look as plug and play as possible, so that you when you're doing this presentation, sending it out, you look like a rock star, even more so than you already do to anybody who's interested in this information. So we leave spots for your logo. We make this so that if someone has no idea what NEMSIS is, we have some introductions in here. If it's a live presentation, we add some slides into here that give you prompts on steering the conversation, encouraging participation from the people who you're working with. Quick introduction into NEMSIS. If you've gone through the data manager course, you've seen all of this information, or if you've been to a presentation that we give at one of the many conferences that we're at throughout the year, you'll see a lot of this information. Again, if this is not something that you are interested in having your presentation, feel free to take it out. What we did here too is the state managers that we talked to sent us samples of the annual reports that they are sending out. And I went through and looked to see for some commonalities with the annual report that NEMSIS puts out. And so that's what gives rise to a lot of these comparison slides. Is on one side you would have, so for example here, total number of activations, you'd have the national numbers, and then you have the side where you could put your state numbers. You'd have medication protocols and procedures, have the national numbers on one side, have the medications given for the state on the other side, and trying to put like a lot of clear information in here to say this is where you can edit your state data in. But again, the whole presentation will be editable. You can put this information into whatever context that you'd like. Cause of injury was another one that I saw in a lot of people's presentations. Some of the ideas that we had of things that we had that we thought people might be interested in comparing national and state numbers would be some information from the drug overdose surveillance dashboard, comparing national and state numbers. Some of the dashboards that we have available that turn into interesting slides would be the NEMSQA measures. Gives a nice bold number, easy way, and it also facilitates conversation for quality improvement, the whole point of those measures. We also have national and state numbers from the 911 complaint dashboard and the MVC dashboard that I thought was interesting information. And then obviously these ideas of places where you can have contact information, more facilitation of the discussion, and then contact information and a thank you. And so from the feedback that we got, this was a draft table of contents, which I am going to send out to the group that we spoke to. And if you would like a copy of this and have any sort of to look through it and give me some sort of feedback on it, I'd love to send it out. Put your information either in the chat here, or feel free to send me an email, and I will send this out to you. But as you can see, what we're planning on right now is what we thought about anyway. The draft idea is to have an introduction, put things in through demographic data, the EMS response characteristics, clinical data, possibly the NEMSQA measures, the overdose dashboard, motor vehicle crash dashboard, some concluding space for concluding insights. What are you trying to say with the data? Is there anything that you want to say as far as key findings and trends that you'd like to get out to your constituents? And the appendices, any sort of the methodology and the data sources. So when people have questions about where did this come from, they can click into those things. And of course, I was going to say, I always forget this, is that anywhere that there is data that we have on the website that is a dashboard or something from the website, all of this information will be already linked, so that if someone wants to dig deeper into the dashboards, they're more than welcome to right away from either of these documents be able to go in and see where the data is coming from, change up their data, take a look at it. That's what those dashboards are for. So the concluding insights, the appendices, and contact information. So like I said, this is wide open. I am looking for feedback on this project as we keep moving forward. I'll keep making updates about this, but if you want to be involved, please let me or Lauri know. And yeah, if we've got any questions, I'm happy to take any of them here. Oh, thanks for putting my email in the chat, Lauri. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And this is the hat I was going to wear anyway. I didn't know that we were all doing this. This is just Wednesday wear here. So I'm glad that a couple other people got into it. But yeah, happy holidays, everybody.
All right, thank you, Chris. So hopefully that gives you guys a quick overview of that idea that we have brewing. And if you have feedback, again, we'd love to hear it of what you'd like to see included. And as we have more versions down the road, we plan to share those with you as well. And I think Chris mentioned, but we do plan to have a template for a PowerPoint as well as a Word document, depending on what type of report you would like to do in your state. And let's see, up next, we have Amber from Colorado, Amber Viitanen. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Amber?
You nailed it.
Great. And Amber's going to give us an update on blood product administration document best practice guide. I know this was talked about at the annual meeting, and a lot of work's been done since then, and she wanted to give an update today.
Sure, yeah. Would you like, can I share my screen? I've got
Yeah.
a little presentation just because it's easier than having me memorize all of the various codes.
Yep, we will give you permission here.
Yeah, okay. And perfect. Okay, how does this look?
Looks good.
Right, thank you. So I was like, someone's got to respond.
Sorry, I was muted.
Also, I didn't know that there was a holiday theme, but I happen to be wearing red today. So look at me jumping on this bandwagon. Okay, this was just a brief presentation. We've given this a few times. It takes all the language that is compiled in the best practices guide that was sent around to all the data managers, last week or 2 weeks ago and puts it in a easy to follow presentation. So folks can ask questions or easily comprehend all the data without having to read the whole 3-page document. I know it's a time suck. But as a reminder, the goal of this work here was to identify the best way to document how blood products are being given in the field so that we can have consistency for local, regional, state, and national analysis. This came from likely some pursuit of funding in the future, and really just to understand, does this practice lead to better outcomes? How many folks are giving it? How many more resources do we need in the field? There was huge variability when Randall sent out a survey as to how different states and agencies are collecting this information. Some folks were doing it in the medications field, some as the procedures, some both, some custom elements, some neither. So we really just wanted to set the scene here and get everybody on the same page moving forward. So the proposed solution, which we discussed at the annual meeting and at recent DMC calls, has been documentation in both procedures and medications. Similar to when we give IV medication, there's a procedure of starting the line and then which medications were given via that IV line. So first and foremost, in the procedures, the concept is that we will document one procedure code, transfusion of a blood product, only one time in the procedures. And then secondary to that, we will document the specific blood product that was given in the medications. And this would allow us to capture multiple administrations if, say, you gave multiple bags of blood or 2 different products, while still understanding the overall procedure and specificity of the medications here. You will notice there is a new code, not new, new to this list on the bottom, the administration of a blood product. We did add that generic code back into this list. So if you have an agency that's using a blood product outside of those that have been specified here, we can still have that documented using that generic code until we can get those additional specific blood products added to this list. We realize that with the update in different releases and versions, it might take time to get more added to this list, and we wanted folks to have a mechanism to be able to still document those specific elements and potentially have them mapped to this more generic code. But we did put in the guidance document, if a blood product is administered, but the SNOMED CT code is not listed here, please reach out to your state data manager to elevate it for national discussion. So first and foremost, make sure states are aware of what other products are being given so they can bring this up at the DMC and we can push to have those codes added to this list in the next updates and release as this document continues to evolve. Okay. And the final piece we just wanted to put in front of everyone's eyes today are the recommended schematron rules. The hope here is that we can agree upon one set of schematron rules for all the states to implement. This is the floor, not the ceiling. So if your state wants to require other elements in combination with the blood product administration, say a full set of vitals, that totally makes sense. You all can do that. But right here, we just want to lay the foundation from a national standpoint as to what needs to be documented just to ensure we have a comprehensive understanding of what blood products are given in the field and how often and to whom. So there's 4 up here on the screen. Always need to put a shout out to the DMC, particularly Chip, who has helped us think through this time and time again. First one just says that transfusion of a blood product should only be documented once, shouldn't be greater than 1. So the second set then essentially says if you're listing transfusion of a blood product in procedures, you must also list the specific product given in the medications. And then the last one is saying similarly the inverse, if you list a specific blood product in the medications, you should also have the transfusion of a blood product in the procedure code. So again, just trying to ensure consistency. This can help us educate folks that things should be documented in both places. And as Randall mentioned, we plan to have the draft document finalized in the upcoming DMC meeting next week, and then it will be pushed as an official best practices guidance document through NASEMSO for everyone to access there. And of course, there's a lot more work to be done here. I think the biggest point we need to make with this guidance document is that it's going to be a fluid document, dynamic. It'll be updated as new guidance becomes available, as we add new codes, as we get more custom elements. So we have added revision dates to all the documents and this little kind of disclosure statement that says, make sure you continually check back. We, of course, will let this group know as we update the documents, as well as the DMC and the Blood Coalition as well. So we'll continue to move forward in conversations about what other elements are needed to documents from a national standpoint for blood product documentation. Really, again, the goal here is to just get consistency. So we're not collecting, blood bag serial number 16 different ways across all of our states. We can have some alignment and some consistency for vendor build out so they don't have to build the same thing 16 different times, as well as a comparable data set if we want to do some projects between different states. With that, I'll take any questions.
Amber, this is Chip. Just relative to the schematron rules, we are just finishing up building those into our image trend product validation rules right now. I think we almost have them working, which is, as we know, two of them are in grids, comparing grids, so it's a little complicated, but I think we have them working. So we're happy to share those with other folks, and they're probably going to get converted to schematron rules in our next update or next update coming out. So if people want to see what those look like when they come out for real, I'm happy to share those. In fact, probably what I'll do is if we get them working, I'll post those to the image trend library as its own little package of blood product schematron or rules or whatever.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chip. And it looks like there's a couple questions in chat too, Amber. Sheree says, can we have business rules 3 and 4 recommendation implemented at a state level so we can control the medication list?
Yeah, I'm not sure I quite understand the question there. So maybe if someone can help clarify. The idea with the schematron rules is that we want the states to implement all 4 of the rules so that we, again, have consistency. It's not built out a million different ways.
What I'm trying to say is instead of having that rule at a national level, if we can have that rule at the state level, because we currently have some rules, but not related to bed works, but related to medication. We have a suggested list at the state level, and we make sure all medications are within the list. So what if we have a blood product that is not part of the national list, but we already started doing it? I don't want the national rule being flagged for something that they're trying to do at the state level.
So are you saying if they're maybe using a different medication code list, then it would get flagged at this national schematron rule?
Mm-hmm.
I see.
I mean, currently we don't have any. We have the same codes as you have, but in the future.
Amber, this is Josh. I think the clarification is that these are not national schematron rules being proposed here. These are rules that you're putting out for states to choose to adopt.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're just, really using NEMSIS here as a platform for us to launch this and make sure everyone's informed and we get the right feedback. But this is just a best practices guidance document that will come out from the DMC. So want to make sure everybody's on board here.
Amber, can I jump in this Chad and Cance real quick? While this is just a best practices guidance document and it's put out maybe for states to adopt, I've said this on some of our DMC meetings, and so those on those meetings might be frustrated with me already for saying this, but there's got to be a point where we as states have to quit doing things so individually at times on stuff like this. Blood product administration is huge across the country, and should be consistent in how we document it. And if there are things that states need that's not in a national data set or in our document, we need to know that so we can add that stuff in. But globally, we have got to quit individualizing ourselves and saying this won't work for us, and this won't work for us, or we do this different, or we do this different. If we do things different, we need to put it together and we need to try and figure out what we're doing different so there can be consistency, because ultimately that's what's going to push not only the EMS data forward, but that's ultimately what's going to help our agencies potentially get money to be able to implement blood product administration. And that's one of the goals of it right there. So it is a best practices and it's kind of for the state, but I honestly think that we need to be working towards a national standard on how this should be documented so that it includes all the things that the states need within the various states, but it can be a national standard that we all have to follow for the consistency piece of it. Just my 2 cents.
Amber, also just kind of addressing that issue. Right now, the way those rules are written, they include this, I guess it's basically 7 RX norm codes that have been put into, or the SNOMED codes that have been put into the RX norm lists under e-medication specifically in the data set. So unless you have a custom code that your vendor has provided, this covers the items that are allowed into the e-medications 03 data set, all of those. So to go beyond that, you'd have to literally be kind of creating custom codes, or if we update the data set at some point to add other blood products, and then presumably we would update the rule to accommodate those. But that would be more of a full national data set change.
This is Kelly, image trend. I just wanted to get some clarification on why would we not make these national rules? So in my experience working with states, typically when a state updates a schematron, they will hold on to updates until they can release it all at once. So what I envision is going to happen is that, yes, all of our states will update to these requirements, but they've probably also been holding on to other updates, and they will want to change their schematron and implement all of those updates at once. So I think that would be overwhelming for all the vendors and all the agencies to update to all these new requirements just because we're not including these at the national level. Plus, this was decided at a national level at the NEMSIS TAC and with the state data managers. It seems very logical to add it to the national standard because you guys want uniformity. I can't say it. But you guys want that standardization, and the TAC is supposed to be that standardization across the nation. So I'm really struggling to understand why we would implement this 50 different ways when we could just implement it once across the board and it would be implemented the exact same way. I guess I'm just really confused on the logic behind making it a state requirement versus a national requirement.
Yeah, and I'll just comment on that first and then put some NEMSIS folks in the hot seat. I don't think that's off the table. I don't think we're eliminating the possibility of that. The reason that we're moving forward with this best practices guidance document is simply so we can be more timely, just knowing that it takes a hot minute to get things added to the NEMSIS standard, and we want to implement this, or at least have the guidance document out there right now for folks to start to understand and implement. But I think it's a good point, and I'm not sure, if folks at NEMSIS, if we've had this discussion about how we would go about adding more schematron rules to the national set.
It really seems like it would be a great candidate for the critical patch to the NEMSIS version. I mean, that's kind of why we implement some of these things, is so that when we do decide as a group that these things need to be implemented, we have tools to put in place to actually implement them at the national level. So I feel like this would be a great candidate, just putting that out there.
And hi, this is Jen. Kevin and Lauri, I know you may want to jump in. It, as Amber said, it's not off the table. But we also have to allow the states that flexibility. And if we make it a part of the national schematron, it no longer has that flexibility. So it's not something we've stopped looking at. It's just right now, kind of as Amber put it, to be timely. This is the way the recommendation is coming out at the moment. Kevin or Lauri, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Hey, Jen, can I just toss something? Have you guys polled the states and see if anyone is objecting to this? At the NEMSIS meeting, there was not a single objection, which I first thought that's amazing, by the way. And this group has gone so far. There was no one in that room that actually had an issue with this. And so I'm just worried that from the vendor perspective is we're going to get 50 schematron requests coming out with implementations less than 60 days. That's huge impact. And like Kelly said, there are probably going to be other changes as well.
And affect our timeline for NEMSIS 351. So like that, there are consequences to making this decision. So just putting that out there, there's definitely things we need to think through on that perspective.
Will there be a source for the schematron rules that were written? So if we, I mean, there's definitely some issues with the state timelines, like was mentioned. If we just want to apply a set of schematron rules to all calls, is that available?
Was that question directed towards me? Because I'm not sure how to answer you.
Yeah, I think so. So whether if it's not in the national schematron, it could be distributed on the national Git repository. Between even the initial rollout, you mentioned additional changes down the line, times 50 states release schedules. I think beyond the initial release where it's either there or it's not, that could be very cumbersome. So I'd definitely favor some kind of central distribution model. So even if it's not in the national schematron itself, could it be published through the national channel in some way?
Yeah, Jen or Josh. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
are you talking about the rule itself, David?
Yes, the rule itself.
Or
So
the rule.
schematron rules, there's 7, I said, or if that could be its own schematron file that we're supposed to be able to take arbitrary schematron files and put them into our products, that would help us.
That is definitely something that we can take back to the team too, and talk about and see if that is something we can do.
Hey, Jen, this is Samantha with ESO. I just kind of want to piggyback on what Doug and Kelly and David are saying. With these being distributed to the states, if they're not distributed in a national level or applied at the national level, I'm worried about the variation we're going to see for each one of these, and how that's going to impact the software. Because if it's at the national level, then we've got a good standard, and if a state wants to, they got really strong guidance. But if we can put some boundaries on it, I think that will help keep it standardized across the nation.
All right, that sounds like some good feedback. Thank you. And we will discuss that internally and we'll chat about that maybe next week on the DMC call as well, all of these ideas. So thank you. And Amber, if you wouldn't mind, it sounded like someone was asking, do they reach out to you if they have ideas? Would you mind putting your email in the chat if you're open to that?
Certainly, I love emails.
And
hey, Amber, that was my question, Doug from Trent. Chip, I like your rules. I just pulled some data because that's what I do. the only suggestion I would have is that it's one maximum of one procedure documented that is non-prior to arrival. I'm seeing that a lot of prior to arrival medications are being documented by critical care companies, and I think that would cause some havoc if we just say total one, regardless if it's prior to arrival or not. Just a suggestion.
Great suggestion. We'll note that. Thank you, Doug. All right, I'm going to move us along today. Next up is Jeremy Kinsman with the NHTSA Office of EMS, and he's going to talk about our 2025-2026 NEMSIS Advisory Board and do some introductions if he's on that today. And you should be able to share if you need to, Jeremy.
Okay, yeah, nothing to share. Just thanks, Lauri, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm pleased to just kind of provide a brief overview of the NEMSIS Subject Matter Expert Advisory Board and announce its new members for the 2025 to 2026 term. As a reminder, the NEMSIS Advisory Board was established by the NEMSIS TAC in coordination with our Office of EMS here at NHTSA to help kind of guide the future of EMS data collection and utilization with a specific focus, obviously, on improving pre-hospital care and outcomes. So the board's purpose is really to kind of provide insights on challenges and opportunities specific to the NEMSIS program and ensure that the data we collect is meaningful, actionable, and aligned with the needs of pre-hospital providers, agencies, and state offices of EMS. So I'm pleased to announce the members of the advisory board for 2025 and 2026. And they include Amber Viitanen, the current NASEMSO DMC chair, Brian Tegmeyer, who's our NHTSA's National 911 coordinator, Dave Milstein from the U.S. Fire Administration, Josh Legler will be providing technical expertise. We have Caitlin Honka offering some EPCR vendor perspective. And then we have two folks providing EMS agency perspectives, Kurt Freeman and Matthew Bergen. Marty Link will be serving as the state EMS director representative. Randall will be serving as the NASEMSO NEMSIS liaison. Rebecca Cash, who some of you I think probably know, will be providing some EMS research expertise. And then Steve Johnson from PWW will be providing legal and policy expertise. So we're really excited about this group. They really bring together kind of a wealth of expertise from across the EMS spectrum. I think they're really going to work hard to ensure that the board's work supports the priorities and challenges for the NEMSIS program. And with that, I will hand it back to Lauri.
Good. Thank you, Jeremy. And thank you, Jen. She put a link in chat there to our website, which does have a list of those board members as well. And you can also find minutes to those meetings if you're interested in reviewing that and see what's discussed at those meetings. The next two topics, I will share my screen again quickly here. I'm going to just touch briefly on. The first is that we are in the midst of a data quality initiative, we're calling it. And so you may be getting or have already gotten an email from Amanda, who's a new BDA with us. And John, Britt is also included in those emails. And essentially, we want to compare the data in our warehouse with what you think you're submitting and the number of agencies that we have that you think are submitting as well, and make sure we're not missing anything or that the numbers line up. And so data quality is really the focus there, and looking for any missing records. And so please respond to that email if you get it. And there's a link in there to set up a time to meet with us and to talk through those numbers as well. So thanks in advance for your help, states. And then we may be reaching out to vendors as well in those meetings. If we do find issues, we'll pull you in to help us problem solve. So thank you for that. And then the second one is just a deadline. I've had a few emails come in of when do you plan to close the 2024 data set again. And our goal is, and our plan, I should say, is to do it on Valentine's Day, as we have the last several years. And so the middle of February really is the target to catch up on any records that may be missing or that may have failed that need to be resubmitted. And so if you can help us with that by keeping that time frame in mind. I know there's a few states trying to wait on a DUA or get it pushed through in time so that they can get their data submitted by that February deadline. And then just a reminder as well, you can always submit data after that. It just will not be included in the public release of our data set. That is a static data set that's unchanging, so it can be compared by lots of researchers that look for that and wait for that to come out. But records that are sent after that, we do receive up to a year after the event took place. We can still receive records, and that will show up on dashboards, just not in the public release of that static data set. So wanted to explain that a little bit. And then next up today, we have Monet, who's going to talk about our monthly report.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Lauri. I'd like to share my screen. Happy holidays. Hope everyone's keeping warm and getting ready for this holiday. All right, fantastic. Let me see. All righty. I want to briefly talk about the monthly public report, the NEMSIS. We call it the NEMSIS monthly report. It's listed here on the public reports page, and you can go ahead and click on NEMSIS monthly reports. And it's the first report here, the activity report for November. And basically, this report is a current it highlights the current initiatives and collaborations that TAC team is working on. It's just a high-level overview. It's not all inclusive of all the various projects that we're working on. For instance, you heard that we're deeply involved in helping with the blood administration and blood documentation products. And so that wouldn't be on here yet, but there are several other initiatives and projects that are listed on this report. And it's just a great way to keep informed of things that we're working on. It's a great resource for you to share with your team and for just various members of your in your agency. So please feel free to just take a look at this and let us know if you have any additional input that you would like to see in this report. And actually, I'm going to just stop here and turn it back over to you, Lauri. But first of all, I'd like to ask, are there any questions? Okay, thank you. Back to you, Lauri.
Thank you, Monet. And up next, we have Sheree Murphy, who's going to talk a little bit about the NEMSQA measures.
Thanks, Lauri.
Yeah.
I too was unaware of today's festive attire, but fortunately, with 3 kids and what we lovingly refer to as the dress-up bin, this is not my normal Wednesday hat attire. Unlike, I don't remember if that was Chris, who this is normal Wednesday attire, not so much for me. All right. I can be quick as well. Sorry, I'm like stalling while I get my slides up. I'd originally asked for just an opportunity to share with this group our inaugural NEMSQA measures report. And we'll take a couple minutes just to give some quick relevant updates, though I would love to give you all the updates of the exciting things that are happening. I'll try to tailor it to what might be of most interest to this group. And I'll put links in the chat, but I struggle with putting links in chat while I am sharing my screen. Like I said, we published our inaugural annual measures report. This report, because we're like have an airway vibe going on at NEMSQA right now, is enhancing airway management one measure at a time. And so I'll put the link in the chat, but the QR code will take you to that. It looks at national performance and has some commentary on that for several of NEMSQA's airway measures, as well as a couple of the airway measures that we created in partnership with NASEMSO as part of their airway EBG development project. EMS1 also did a podcast with Dr. Jarvis, aka the airway guy, on the report. So wanted to just share that so you all could see that and how the data is being used. And this is our first report, and so we'll look forward to another report focusing on a different topic, TBD, for 2025. And then just a quick update on our measure development activities as they may relate to you all. We're right now working on a project actually in partnership or collaboration with the NEMSIS TAC to develop post-motor vehicle crash or trauma care measures to improve post-crash care and outcomes. So we're currently in, actually, I'm not going to talk about that because I'm remembering that I have a next slide that kind of has the timeline and all the steps in that process. The other projects that we have ongoing are the sedation and agitation measures. We started that project back in the spring with a literature review and have developed several measures that we have out for public comment right now, and would really appreciate your comment, especially if you are a state that has a custom element or uses a custom element around the sedation scale or score. I'm probably using the wrong terminology. And that whole discussion around stroke earlier is coming back to me. Because we did try to incorporate those into one of the measures. And again, I'll provide the link to that public comment. We also are doing some, yes, Amber, we did incorporate that, the national element into that measure. We also are doing some maintenance on the measures, which is kind of doing a thorough review of measures and looking at any updates that are needed. We did update the airway measures and sent that out a while ago. So if, I'm sorry, I can't remember the month, it may have been September or October that went out. So make sure that you check back for the most updated specifications on those. Next up, we're working on the respiratory measures and also taking a look at how the 3.5.1 updates may impact some of our existing NEMSQA measures, such as the Safety 04, with the addition of, and that's the pediatric restraint device, with the addition of some codes for that. So that work will be ongoing over the course of 2025 to make sure that the measures are up to date. And also in 2025, we'll be doing another call for measure endorsement. We did this back and I believe we started in 2021. We recognize that other national organizations or states or regions may be utilizing some measures of EMS quality of care. And we don't at NEMSQA want to reinvent the wheel or create the similar but different measure. A good example of that is the American Heart Association and their STEMI, our Mission Lifeline measures. What we would rather do is say, yeah, these are things that NEMS are important for EMS stakeholders to be looking at and making improvements on. And so we would direct you to use those measures as opposed to us coming up with our own version of those measures. So we'll be doing that again. The first time we did it, we ourselves did a scoping review to look for measures. This time around, we're going to ask for submission of measures, and there'll be more detail as far as the definition of what applies here. This isn't just a call for measure ideas where a single agency or EMS stakeholder has a measure that they think should be done, but these are measures that are being used in other national, regional, or state programs, and have already been used or developed. So those are the high level measure development overview work. Like I said, I wasn't going to steal my thunder. Getting back to the post motor vehicle crash or trauma care measure development project, we're right now working on identifying what the concept for measure development can be. As you can imagine, post MVC or trauma care covers a lot of ground. NEMSQA has a couple of trauma measures looking at going to a trauma center, doing a trauma notification, and a couple measures that are labeled trauma, which are around pain. Obviously, there's a lot of ground to cover in between there. So this has been a pretty lengthy process where we've taken recommendations from pre-hospital guidelines that have been rated as like high quality guidelines by the Pre-Hospital Guidelines Consortium, and review each of those recommendations to see if a pre-hospital care measure can be developed from that. We've also taken recommendations from the technical expert panel on ideas for measures around this, particularly enjoying the conversation around standardization of blood product documentation, since that is a concept that came up here. And so we would very much like some standardization around that. And then after that, we'll move through the process of prioritizing the measures. We obviously won't be able to develop everything. That is takes a bit of time and a lengthy process. So we'll identify what the highest priority measures are and go through our development process. The only other thing I will just quickly mention, but won't go into a lot. Oh, here you go. Here's your QR codes. And in the spirit of being festive, if you saw our social media posts, I will admit personally, I am an ELF fan. So loved this meme about feedback. So if you want to grab that QR code, and we also do have 24/7 hour feedback form where you can provide feedback, questions, or suggestions to us anytime. And the other thing is our EMS quality improvement partnership. If you remember, we did lights and siren. We're now doing airway management. Great representation across states, and appreciate those of you, like a shout out to Chad, and there may be others. I just only happen to know about this one, who are helping support the agencies that are participating in helping them get their data for this project. And that is all I will say for now. And of course, always the plug to follow us. And that's what I got. Any questions? And as I try to furiously enter links into the chat before the call ends.
Hi, Sheree. This is Chip from New Hampshire. We've had a little discussion with the DMC, or Chad's driving it, but I'm very interested in it. Have you guys had any discussion about maybe talking to NEMSIS or others about getting specific area codes for iGels to differentiate between iGels and Kings, which are the two common EMS airways? Right now, we just have a single lumen SGA right now is one of the airways. And I think some states would like to evaluate the differences between the two of them and the success rates and everything, but we don't have a SNOMED code for it. And I think Clay had said at the NEMSIS meeting that's something that they've successfully requested in the past and be able to get some SNOMED codes. Is there any discussion on that at the NEMSQA level?
Okay, I am not a data expert on this. I had no idea that that was not a distinction that could be made. So I will certainly bring this up and appreciate that.
Well, we can have some more internal discussion with the data managers as well. I was just curious if you guys had some other discussions.
No, we had not. And maybe it's just that I'm forgetting it, because once you start getting into the nitty-gritty of SNOMED codes. That is a Kelly Burleson measure development specialist conversation, and I may have slightly tuned that out. So I can't necessarily say that that has not been a topic, but I will make sure that it is something that we talk about. And obviously, you know, we're very well connected with Chad, and so I will make sure that I connect with you and Chad on the details of what that looks like. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks, Sheree, and reach out if you guys have questions for her. Just real quickly, we are not going to have a second V3 call this month because of the holiday coming up in 2 weeks. So this will be our only call this month. And then I wanted to announce January 8th is our next meeting. And we have a few minutes for open forum if anyone has a conversation they'd like to bring up. Otherwise, we can hop over into vendor breakout rooms for the last few minutes. All right, let me share my screen here so you can see your options today. Move that over here. If you would like to chat or problem solve together with any of these vendors, you'll have an opportunity in just a moment here to choose which room you want to go into. And before you go, just let me say thank you for your time and participation. We appreciate it. And reach out if there's anything we can do to help.
And
thanks, everyone.
I would like to quickly mention that we do have a public training scheduled for Tuesday, January 7th. The topic is going to be the public pre-hospital pediatric quality measures dashboard. And the presenter is Benjamin Fincher, and we will get a flyer created and sent out for that training. Thank you.
Good, thanks, Monet. All right, we will see you over in breakout rooms. Thank you, everyone.